time, I'm going to call the Local Agency Formation Commission meeting to order for Monday, November 6th. And can we please have roll call?
Yes, Chair Mulhern,
Here.
Commissioner Ward, Commissioner Gonzalez,
Gonzalez is here.
Commissioner McGordy,
Here.
Commissioner Roden,
Here.
Commissioner Horsley,
Here.
Commissioner Cole,
Here.
alternate Commissioner Winkle. It appears to be present. Alternate Commissioner Kristen.
Thank you for that.
I think she called my name, but I didn't hear it.
Oh,
But I'm here.
Commissioner Ward is here.
Thank you. Staff members present include Executive Officer Uma Hinman, Clerk Analyst Larkin Filer, and Legal Counsel Marcia Birch.
Thank you very much. At this time, we will move to public expression. And just a reminder for the committee, if you could use the highlighters that are in your desk drawer, that helps me identify when you wish to speak so that I can keep track of everybody as we move into the meeting. If you are participating remotely, you may comment on public participation by using the Zoom feature on your computer or tablet. If you are calling in via telephone, you may use the *9 feature on your keypad to raise your hand. The Commission welcomes participation in the LAFCO meeting. Any person may address the Commission on any subject within the jurisdiction of LAFCO which is not on the agenda. There's a 3-minute limit and no action will be taken at this meeting. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak on public expression? Seeing none. We do not have other business today. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Item 4A is the approval of the September 11th, 2023 regular meeting summary.
So move.
Well, item 4B is the September 2023 claims and financial reports, and item 4C, October 2023 claims and financial reports. And I wonder if Mr. Ward has a question
I
or
certainly
comment.
do. I certainly do. Thank you. I guess it's my job to find something each month. I'd like to begin with on the minutes. I've read lots of different minutes from different jurisdictions, and I think we have the best minutes ever. It's well explained. I know it takes a lot of writing and whatnot, but I think from a public standpoint, people reading our minutes really get a grasp of what goes on at our meetings, and I really appreciate that. One item that I did finally, I did bring up last meeting was West America Bank was not only paying us 0.07% interest. I did meet with the bank and I got it up to 2.5% or 2.2%. So hopefully it'll show up on our next bank statement. So keep an eye out on that. I haven't seen the one. I think you sent those this morning. Yeah.
And they did show up, so
They
thank
did
you
show
for
up.
doing that.
Good. Is there also a bank service charge on that?
There's a $4 bank service charge.
Why will we have a bank service charge when we have $130,000 in the account? So I'll have to deal with that one too.
I believe it has
That's
to do with
ridiculous.
the paper statements that we receive.
Yeah, well, that's still, I'll talk to him about that. The other question I had was, there was a billing from our Marcia Birch about Fort Bragg MID. What is that?
We have been working with the city of Fort Bragg on the out-of-area services we've received a number of inquiries lately, and I actually have this discussion under our executive officer report later on. But Marcia has spent quite a bit of time researching the Fort Bragg Municipal Improvement District and the Principal Act and what it is formed under, and then how that relates to the services that are being provided by the city of Fort Bragg for both water and sewer. So we're still digging into that and working with city staff on understanding that.
So that's in relationship to our work plan, or is that an application?
This is not related to the work plan or application at this point. It may result in an application later, but not at this time.
Should it be charged to the city of Fort Bragg?
Not yet.
But it will be.
I don't know that these charges will be billed to the city. This just falls under a LAFCO work program.
Okay. The other one was, I noticed Millview, well, their application is quite old, but there's still a balance owing of $109. I know it's been going on for 3, 4, 5 months. When will we be able to get that paid to us?
I can reach out to the district again on that.
Okay, that's all I have, thanks.
Thank you for your diligence. As always, Mr. Ward, Commissioner Horsley?
Yes, I had a question, piggybacking on the applications. I'm assuming, I'm looking at like the City of Ukiah annexation of city-owned properties. So it's just an estimate, right? You try to come up with what you think it's going to cost, and then they're charged whatever it actually does cost, and so there's always a difference because what the estimate is versus what the actual. Is that correct for those?
Basically, that's correct. What we have is a fee schedule that identifies the minimum deposit necessary to start an application. It is all at cost. So we, about a year ago, the commission adopted service fees, and so we bill the applications at those service fees. And then once we get to the end of the deposit that's available, we ask for additional deposit so that we're always working against a deposit and not left.
Right, holding the bag. So the 3941 is the deposit, or what was the deposit there for the City of Ukiah's annexation?
The full deposits is under the first column, and it's $8,283.75. So that's what's been paid by the city, and we don't anticipate anything further on that.
Okay, all right. And then on just another quick question, on page 15, under 7,000 work plan, it says you're developing administrative drafts. Has that been completed for anything yet on those small water districts, or you're still developing the drafts?
We have rough administrative drafts for all of the service providers at this point. We have sent out a couple of requests for information, and we have some meetings scheduled, so I can fill you in more on that under.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? And then I did have a motion for approval from Commissioner McGorty, if I have it.
Second.
Thank you. Can we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Ward,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner McGorty,
Yes.
Commissioner Roden,
Yes.
Commissioner Horsley,
Yes.
Commissioner Cole,
Yes.
and Chair Mulhern.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much. We do not have a public hearing today. We also do not have workshops. The commission had asked for some informational items to be brought forward, so we have several informational items on our agenda today. And we will start with the Ukiah Valley Groundwater Sustainability Agency Fee Rate Study.
Thank you, Chair Mulhern. I'll do a quick introduction, but we do have some presenters that have joined us today. The Ukiah Valley Groundwater Sustainability Plan was approved by the state earlier this year and is now in its implementation phase. The Groundwater Sustainability Agency has selected consultants to assist with establishing long-term and dependent funding mechanisms for the agency. I'd like to introduce Shailene Rollins of Rollins PR Consulting and Catherine Hanford of Hansford Economic Consulting. LAFCO was identified as a stakeholder in the process, and they have joined us today to present the project to the commission. So Larkin, if I could ask you to allow for sharing of the screen. You have a PowerPoint? Catherine or Shailene?
Yes, we have a PowerPoint ready to share with you.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you very much for having us this morning. It's great that we were able to get on the agenda at the last minute, and we really appreciate you making the accommodation for us.
Okay, let me see if I can share. So- Sorry, I'm just going to move screens here. And there we go. All right, you should all be able to see the slide up on the screen now. All right, so thank you for that introduction. That was very helpful. We have just been developing this fee and rate study, and as mentioned, LAFCO was identified as a stakeholder in this process. So today we really want to just talk about what we're doing, and see if you have any input for us. That'd be terrific. Okay, so we have been engaged to create a dependable long-term funding mechanism to support the GSA's activities. As you know, they have to comply with the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. The Ukiah Valley Basin must demonstrate progress each year toward achieving sustainability, and it must achieve sustainability within 20 years. So at the end of the time frame of that GSP document, so by 2043. The consultant team includes myself, I'm the fee consultant, and Shailene Rollins, who's doing all of our public outreach. We also have the firm KSN in West Sacramento helping us, and they are working on project cost estimation and prioritization, and also the GIS mapping that is just so critical to completing this work. So a little bit of the funding background. The GSA is a joint powers agreement. It has 4 members: City of Ukiah, the County of Mendocino, the Russian River Flood Control and Water Conservation District, and the Upper Russian River Water Agency. And since its inception, those 4 member agencies have been funding all of the activities of the GSA. But the intent was, as the JPA was written up, that by the end of fiscal year 2026, they would have a new fee in place, and that between now and 2026, the goal is to phase out the member contributions such that the GSA becomes reliant completely on the new funding mechanism. And the new funding mechanism has that authority by section 10730 of the Water Code. So our fee study goals, as I mentioned, is to eliminate the contributions from the member agencies and to establish a fair fee structure that generates a sufficient and stable revenue stream based on best available data and developed information. We want to secure a fee structure that is adopted with maximum buy-in from stakeholders, and it's very important to us that we maintain transparency throughout this project. So a little overview on how GSA activities can be funded. If you see that middle bucket there, these are the general tools. This is how the agency has been funded to date without debt. There's no debt being issued, but there's been member contributions and there's been grants from the state. And so far, those are the 2 things that have funded all the activities. SGMA specifically authorizes these 3 different buckets here. So regulatory fees, these are types of fees for permits and inspections, and also for government products and services. We call that a Proposition 26 type of fee. Then it can also adopt property-related fees. This is what you think of as a Proposition 218 type of fee, where the property is receiving a service from the agency, and it has to follow all of the requirements of Proposition 218 in that case. And then they also have authority for meter installation cost recovery, and they have authority for penalties and things like that too. I'm not going to focus at all on this right-hand side specialized tools. There are other funding mechanisms that a GSA can also use. We are not looking at those. They're very special to the circumstance, things like special taxes and assessments and mitigation fees and tax increment. They're all things that that can be done, but we're not looking at these specialized tools right now. We are just looking at Sigma tools, and we are focusing specifically on regulatory fees and property related fees. And really, which route the agency decides to go is dependent on what the purpose is of the new fee. So we have to look at what are all the different types of activities that the GSA intends to perform. And we're looking really into about the next 5 years. We're not going beyond that at this time. We do know that there are some much longer term projects that will probably need an additional funding mechanism at some point in the future, but right now we're just looking at the next 5 years. So if all of the activities that have been conducted really fall under regulatory activities, it could be a Proposition 26 fee. Those types of activities include reporting to the Department of Water Resources, documenting well and pumping activity, conducting studies, running programs, filling data gaps. That's an extremely important piece. And that would include things like adding additional monitoring wells in the area, adding weather stations, things to support the data library for the GSA, and that will inform actions it takes in the future. Inspections and enforcement of the regulations that have been adopted by the GSA's board, and then, of course, all the general program administration expenses, including staffing costs and all the sort of office type costs. As I mentioned, the GSA could also adopt a Proposition 218 fee. But in order to do that, it really needs to be demonstrating that it has some kind of management activity in addition to its regulatory activities. And that could include things like acquiring land for projects and actually building projects. Things like recharge basins, surface water delivery pipelines, and those kinds of things. This is more looking at infrastructure projects and really becoming what the state would consider a water provider in some sense, not in the traditional sense like you have a water agency per se, but it falls under this umbrella of providing a service. So what we really want to talk to stakeholders and kind of key in our focus is on fee structure options. Much like with a rate study, and you're probably quite familiar with this, we have certain goals for this fee structure. One is that we need to make sure that it's defensible. Obviously, we have legal counsel that is helping us with that, but we have to ensure that the methodology that we use for this fee structure demonstrates reasonableness of the fee structure and the amount that's going to be charged, and that is defined in the California Constitution. So that's probably goal number one. And coupled with financial stability, we have to be confident that this fee structure will produce the amount of revenue that's needed, at least through this 5-year period that we're forecasting. We want to strive our hardest to make this an equitable fee structure, and certainly that we give all parties an equal opportunity to participate in the process. This fee needs to be enforceable, so we must have the ability to collect the fee based on reliable data. And that has become, for some GSAs, this has become a bit of a difficult area. Simplicity, we want to make sure that whatever kind of a fee structure we end up with, it's something that can be implemented with ease. We're not trying to create something that's complicated or that will make the costs greater than really needs to be each year for those that administer the fee. And finally, we want to make sure that this fee structure is understandable by the customer base. So all those people who are going to be charged the fee, we need to be able to explain it, and people might not really want it, but they need to at least understand it. So some of the options that we are looking at, and that is also based in part on looking at case studies and what other GSAs have been doing across the state from north to south. And ultimately, what we will be working on coming back to the GSA in January is having 3 fee structures that have been based off of the stakeholder input, so what we hear from our stakeholders in November and December, and also on the data limitations. We might have one of these options that stakeholders feel strongly is the best option, but if we don't have the data, that means we can really enforce the fee, make sure it's applied equitably, then it's not going to be a good fee structure. So our options are a wellhead fee. So this is just a flat fee. If you have a well, you would receive a fee each year because you have a well. So it's a very simple type of fee structure. Parcel fee, also pretty simple. It's a flat charge based off of your parcel. It could be based off of parcel type as well, but it's just a flat fee as well. And an acreage fee, that's a flat fee per acre, so would vary depending on the size of the parcel. And that can be applied to different types of customers, or you could end up with some kind of hybrid fee where some types of customers pay by acreage and some customers pay a different way. We have a point of connection fee. Shailene and I both worked in the Salinas Valley Basin, and there we developed a fee that is an acreage fee for the irrigators, the agricultural folks, and then a connection fee for all of those who are on a water system. And an extraction fee. So that would be a fee paid per year, or it could be more frequent than per year, but it's based off of the amount of pumping from the well. So each well owner would receive a fee, and it could be based off of an estimate of the pumping, or if that well owner has a meter, it would be based off of the actual pumping. So we could also end up with some type of hybrid of these options. I already mentioned in Salinas, we created a hybrid fee structure that's working very well for them. And I do know for a few other GSAs in the state, they've also adopted a hybrid fee. And so it really becomes a question of what works best in your area. So the best fee is determined based on the available reliable data, the input we receive from the customer base, the resource capabilities of the GSA and its participating agencies, and the legal guidance that we receive. We are considering the reasonable relationship between the charge and the benefit received. Again, that's really key, that legal requirement. We are considering disparities in ability to pay, excuse me, between communities and types of customers, and also language and cultural barriers that we know do also exist in the Ukiah Valley. I'm not going to go into projected costs at this point in time, but do want to talk just a little bit about how we project the costs and come up with what's called a revenue requirement. So how much money needs to be raised by the fee. And this is going to be based on our best estimate of costs for the next 5 years, as I said, based on staff knowledge and in combination with consultant expertise and experience. So looking at the different types of costs that we know of, we have administrative costs. These are the general costs. The GSA has a contract with the counties. There's some county charges for actions they do. Board meetings, the website, legal services, insurance, and fee program costs, for example. There are those administrative costs that are being driven by the GSP. So that's GSP implementation oversight, contracts, fiscal management, outreach and engagement, grant writing, for example. And then we have the GSP implementation actions. So these are things that are written up in the GSP as a way for the basin to move into sustainability and be compliant. with Sigma. So that includes monitoring and reporting, studies. We know of a recharge master plan, the water supply resiliency study, for example, and various programs that might be set up, things like a voluntary metering program, assisting member agencies / partners, because these could be both public and private, with implementation projects, and land repurposing, for example. So these are all types of programs that could be conducted. And then importantly, making sure that there are prudent reserves for cash flow purposes, for sort of emergency, not true emergencies in the sense that a pipeline has to be replaced, but perhaps something comes up where there's a great opportunity to partner with another agency or with a nonprofit, for example, and the timing works out, and it would really behoove the GSA to move forward with that project, that they have the available cash to do that. So prudent reserves are also very important in that cost projection. Our schedule to completion is that we started the project in July. In October, we had a board workshop with the GSA, went into a lot more depth on some things that I just skimmed the surface with you today. We are now in our stakeholder interview period. We will be going back to our GSA board in January. At that time, the board will be asked to make a decision on which fee pathway we're going to move forward with, whether it's a Prop 26 fee or if it's a 218 fee. We will be holding a community workshop that evening, and then coming back in March and talking about some more of the technical aspects, getting maybe a little bit more into depth with data, reliable data, the mapping, and so forth with the TAC, and that will be in March, followed again by a community workshop. So we're trying to really combine our visits to Ukiah to be as good as we can with our budget. And then we will be presenting to the board again in April. That should be the final report at that time. And then we'll just take the steps to go toward a public hearing and a resolution to adopt the fee in June. So that's our overall timeline. We hope it goes smoothly, and we have a fee adopted by June. As I mentioned, public outreach is a very important part of this whole process. So some of the, oh, excuse me, I've gotten an old piece of information here. I should have updated that. So we just want to make sure that all of our messaging is very clear, that when this is not being imposed by an agency that's already in existence, that this is a very new fee from a new agency. And we're looking at several factors in determining possible funding options, again, really addressing the unique needs of the communities. And as I mentioned, we'll have a couple of workshops to talk about it. So we have our 2 public workshops in Ukiah, and additionally, we'll be providing education through email, through electronic newsletters, through the website, other media outlets, presentations as we're requested, and also for those local organizations who are willing to put a little bit of information in those newsletters, that would be very helpful for us as well. So that's it. I finished my presentation, and would love to get any input that you have.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I will just be looking for questions from the committee, and I believe that our clerk could email out the presentation to the commission members. Our website is currently down, but I do want the commission members to have all of that information for their records. So we'll start with Commissioner Horsley.
Really basic question here. You did a very good job on your presentation on the report that we received also. I was very impressed with it. And I understand about the fees and options and so forth. I guess my one question is, who is this going to apply to? Is it everybody in the valley? Is it just people that have wells? Or is it people that have meters? who is it going to actually, the fee is going to be applied to?
Yeah, so great question. And that's not completely determined yet because it does depend a little bit on some decisions that the board makes. But generally, it can apply to any properties within the GSA's boundaries. So that's from Redwood Valley down. I don't think I could really describe it too well, but essentially the Ukiah Valley Basin area. And the law states that federal properties cannot be charged the fee. Any tribal properties that are held in trust by the federal government cannot be charged the fee. And domestic well owners can be charged the fee, but only if the GSA board determines that that is appropriate and that they will be regulating the domestic well owners. So they will, they may do that. I don't know. That's a decision that the board has to make. How people get billed, how customers get billed, also depends on choices. So the fee could be placed onto the property tax bill, but it could also just be charged to a water supplier, for example. The water supplier could pay that bill to the GSA and then charge its customers however it chooses to do so. So there's different ways to do this, but generally, very broadly, any properties that are within the GSA's boundaries may be subject to the fee.
Thank you. Commissioner McGordy and then Commissioner Ward.
Good morning, and thank you for being here with us to explain this, because eventually LAFCO will have a role. So I wear many hats, and one of them is as chair of the Ukiah Valley Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency, and I just want to lay a few things out. The most important thing is to understand that this is an unfunded mandate that has been demanded by the state. And I think it's important. We do want to manage groundwater. We're fortunate that so far all data indicate that Ukiah Valley Basin is more or less in balance. In other words, we are not mining our water. So we get recharge even during the drought. We saw a pretty good recharge where fluctuation of water level is about maybe 20 to 30 feet a year on most of our test wells. But it seems to recharge pretty well even with relative modest amounts of rainfall. Like our driest years of 19 inches, we saw the level come back up. There's two aquifers in the basin that are important. Recharge is important. We don't completely understand all of recharge. It was once thought that the Russian River played the main recharge effort, but we know also there's 162 different little tributaries that fill the valley. And it's really important, the water that's coming down from the mountains around us on either side of the Mayacamas on the east and the Mendocino Mountains on the west, and that they're an important source of water. The total amount of water we're talking about is not really a huge amount of water. If we look at what's pulled out of the groundwater basin, it's about 7,000 acre feet. So compare that to what's in the basin, which is probably closer to 300,000 acre feet and two different aquifers. One's relatively shallow, one's much deeper. Compare that to Lake Mendocino, which holds about 100,000 acre feet. So you begin to see that the amount of groundwater we're pumping is not that huge. About 5,000 of it is going to agriculture, and about 2,000 of it is going to urban and city use, primarily the city of Ukiah pumping it. We don't have a complete count on the number of wells that are in there, but we know the ag users are the big users. And one of the philosophies I think the Board of Supervisors has, that the people who use the resource should pay for it. So as we think about how is this going to get paid for, the most equitable way is that those who pump should pay. And then the other thing is how much, because we see, I've seen proposed budgets that range from $200,000 to over $1 million a year for Ukiah Valley Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency, which spending $1 million a year on 7,000 acre feet is quite a lot of money. It's not very much water. to supply the basis for spending $1 million. So this is where the state comes in. If there's things that they feel that we need in our study or our plan, which, by the way, was passed, which is really wonderful because there's been 260 of them in the state, and only about 50 of them have been approved, and Ukiah's is one of them. So it really makes a big difference how we're going to allocate the cost of running the agency and how much that agency is going to cost to run. Those are really, really big factors. From an equity point of view, I feel like one of the better ways we could do it is charging on a irrigated acre basis based on the crop that you have, because we know what consumptive use of crops are in our area. We know how much water they're going to use. If you go to meters, they tend to be expensive to install and expensive to read, and it would be not my first choice, certainly, for how we manage this. The equity thing is a big issue, because if we're going to charge everybody a parcel tax, we will be subsidizing some of our bigger growers. I personally don't want to subsidize Prudential Insurance Company, who recently purchased a very nice vineyard in our area, and is, they can afford a fee for sustainability on that land. So these are some of the things that we're going to have to think about as we go forward, and I'm giving you my own prejudices about what I think is equitable and fair. And as the study goes on, I know I'll have a chance to interact with our consultants, and looking forward to it so that we lay everything out on the table and try to figure out what's the best fit for us. I'm going to go the cheapo route because A, unfunded mandate, B, if the state wants us to improve our sustainability plan, they have in the past had a pretty robust grant program. I think there's things we can do to make our groundwater even more sustainable. We are also dealing with issues that were associated with legacy problems from Lake Mendocino, which has degraded the quality of the Russian River by causing incision down and channeling, which means that the water table has dropped significantly in some places, and that could be repaired. And if so, probably the Army Corps of Engineers should be helping us with that. So these are all things going forward that we have to think about as we plan for the future and what we're going to do. And I'm sorry to get on my soapbox here, but I want to give you kind of a thumbnail sketch of where we are with the agency so that you kind of understand the situation and where we sit.
Thank you for that information. And Commissioner Ward.
Thank you. Overview questions first. For Uma, what is the role of CALAFCO on this?
That we would discuss in our MSRs for water agencies in the Ukiah Valley area in particular. GSAs are not subject to LAFCO. They don't fall under LAFCO jurisdiction, except in some cases where in some counties a GSA has created a special district. In that case, then LAFCO does have jurisdiction, but my understanding is that LAFCO has no jurisdiction over GSAs, and Marcia might be able to provide some more detail on that.
So how would it exactly fit into the work plan?
It would just fall under data collection during our municipal service reviews of those specific districts, water
Well,
districts.
would we try to be determining who has meters, who doesn't have meters? Who, are we going to be instructed to keep track of that kind of stuff?
No, I don't believe so.
You hope not.
I don't believe so.
Okay. What about this is a state law, I presume, right? Why is it just applying to the Ukiah Valley? Why not Laytonville or over on the coast?
Because we have what's considered a medium, sorry to jump in.
That's all right,
Please do.
need an answer.
Okay, so, sorry, Madam Chair, but I know the quick answer to this is that the state determined that we're what's called a medium priority basin. They used kind of a rubric that takes a look at how much water is being extracted from the ground, what the population is, how many wells, how many acres of farmland. And on that basis, we were categorized at medium priority basin.
Okay. So currently there's 4 agencies that are within the basin. Why, no, maybe back up. Who is the board? Who is the board?
So the board has representatives from...
So it's a county board?
It's a JPA.
The
and-
JPA.
And it has representatives from the different agencies that participate, and I'm pretty good, but I can't remember everybody.
Well, there were described 4 of them. I think
Yeah.
it was the Russian
Yeah.
River. So,
Plus an ag member and a tribal member.
okay, so they're the board. All right, and then the 4 agencies that was described in the presentation as well as our packet were the 4 that, I can't name them all, but why can't the county water agency be involved in this and be the board? I know I'm asking you, Glenn, on that.
Commissioner McGorty.
I can answer that too, because we don't have a very functional county water agency. It's pretty minimally funded, and it really has very little power.
Yeah, but there's a funding mechanism right here that you could use.
There are funding mechanisms. It's politically a hot potato, because basically the people who use water, the board believes, are the ones that should pay for it. And so my own personal belief is that water is needed in every community. We should probably have a more robust Mendocino County Water Agency, but at the moment we don't. So we're letting each community sort of find their own way through these things, and some are doing well, such as the city of Ukiah. Some are not doing so well, such as the town of Mendocino, and that's just political at the moment where we stand.
Okay, thank you. This is for the question to the presenters. What did this study cost?
120,000.
And then the annual cost, I believe there was some discussion in our packet, there was like possibly 167,000 a year.
No, no.
No?
Annually,
Did I read it
no,
wrong?
no. Annually, for the fee administration, it should be no more than 15,000.
15,000?
Yeah,
That's for all the administrative costs in the future and,
that's for
And-
billing, making sure that the fee amount is applied to all of the users. And again, we don't know quite yet if it's going to go on the property tax roll or not, but if it is, then typically you have a consultant do that work. I don't know. I mean, perhaps there is someone on staff who can do that. It's not necessarily going to be a third-party consultant doing the work, but based on my experience, the annual cost should really only be up to about $15,000.
but who's paying for the study cost? Or this study?
The members are.
The members are, and they're passing it on to the ratepayers?
Well, no, I mean, at this point, it's their member contributions. I don't know where exactly they're pulling that funding from.
So each one of the member agencies is contributing annually a cash fee to help pay for these things, and that's where it's coming from. And the hope is that there'll be a handoff at some point to where the ratepayers will pick up the cost of running the agency, which we hope is in the near future, because obviously it's an expense that's been going on since 2017, and the JPA members would like to see it eventually get paid for by the people who use the water.
Okay. I'm just concerned about it. I'm just concerned about another government agency coming in, charging for it. I just would wish there was, our county water agency, at least for the basin, had a better say in it. We're spending money that I don't think, I think it's just another government agency that we're gonna end up paying for. So I'm just tired of the, what they call government creep. And then you get into enforceability issues and things like that. It's just going to become a mess. Anyway, that's all I have.
Thank you.
I
Yes,
just
go
wanted
ahead.
to note that the member agencies are the City of Ukiah, the County of Mendocino, the Russian River Flood Control District, and the Upper Russian River Water Agency, which I think the members of that agency are include the special districts in the Ukiah Valley area.
Thank you.
Commissioner Roden.
Thanks. I have a couple questions. My question is the same as Commissioner Horsley's, but just to kind of tag on to that. So the city of Ukiah is clearly a user of groundwater from the basin. So, for example, the city of Ukiah might be taxed in some, or charged a fee, sorry, for the maintenance of the agency. And then the city could choose to on its own how it wants to recoup that cost, right? Similarly to your example of a district, or, I mean,
That's an option. Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Okay. And then I don't understand exactly what you want from us today. Is it just informational that you're just telling us
Yeah.
what's going on?
Yeah.
Or did you want input about the type of fee we think would be the best, or you're just telling us what's up?
We're letting you know what's happening with
Right.
the study, and we're inviting any discussion and input that you have in as much as you want. So if you do have a feeling about fee options and structure, we'd like to hear it. But we're not asking for anything specifically from you today.
Well, yeah, I think that the criteria that you're applying toward determining what fees you'll use, the what was it, like enforceability and equity and I forget what they all were,
Yeah.
made total sense. And so I think if you can apply those, you'll get to you'll find the right answer. That's my input.
Okay. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner McGorty.
Yeah, I just wanted to lay something else out there on the board. And while I kind of agree with Commissioner Ward a lot, I think it's also important to recognize there are parts of California that have real severe problems with overpumping and groundwater management. We're lucky we're not one of them, but my former residence at Paso Robles has gotten to the point where they're pumping ancient seawater below parts of their aquifer, which isn't good. It's really bad because essentially the water is salty. They're not replenishing their aquifer, and they probably really need to take a deep dive into their water source and how they use water, because it's not sustainable in the long run to think that you're going to empty an aquifer and get by with it. And we have, there are solutions, none of them are really fun. Adjudication becomes one where basically you start to regulate very heavily who gets to use water. And so we're trying to avoid that too. So we're kind of walking a tightrope here to be sure that we are smart with the way that we use water. The other wild card for us is transfers of water from the Eel River into the Russian River, and we don't completely understand the impact and how things will change if we're bringing in less water, which we almost certainly will, and the time of when we bring water in from the Eel River will be in the winter when we have high flows on the Russian River. So that's also an impact too, which we don't completely understand. So there's going to be a lot of work to get done on this, and so while we want to go the cheapo route, we want to be sure that we also have enough reserves to be able to study how things will change over time, and so that we have a good handle on how our aquifer works, so that we don't run out of water.
Thank you. Commissioner Ward.
Yeah, thank you. I guess there's no vote, so I can't vote against it, but I would like to say that this is a short time frame, and I want the public to be aware of it. What I don't hear today is what the costs are going to be for the public. I'm hoping the Farm Bureau will get involved. I hope the city of Ukiah will get involved. I hope the public really understands what's going on here, because they are ultimately going to be charged a fee, and they need to know this. So I'm hoping that it isn't driven by the board, it's driven by the public and what those costs will be, because I don't know what the costs are. We've already spent $120,000 on a study, so I'm hoping that the public will get involved in this. And whatever we can do as a commission to get that out there, I appreciate it.
Thank you for that feedback. I think that really is important, but also the members that sit on that agency are in direct contact with the ratepayers for their agencies as well as with the public. And I think that likely Director Hinman can email out to this board the information about the upcoming public workshops so that we all can connect our resources and our constituents to that. I see that alternate Commissioner Crane has his camera on, and so I just want to make sure that he doesn't have any feedback about this item before we move on.
I do. You
Please
hear
go
me all
ahead.
right?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. This is information for a little bit of a report about what sort of expenditures our body has had. I am co-chair of the Groundwater Sustainability Agency. Or vice chair, I should say. Thank you. We started out with the 4 agency each contributing $50,000 a year. And there was a fair amount of grant money that helped soften the blow. But it looks to me like the journey we're on is going to expand several times in the next few years to get in place the things that we're supposed to do. Several of us have the view that we want to do the least we can do because a lot of us don't feel that we should have been in this piece of legislation at all. But we are, and we have to deal with it. That's a little bit of background. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, seeing no additional questions from the commission, thank you very much for the report today. I think it's helpful for the commission to understand what's happening around us, even if we're not directly voting on these items. We are going to move on to item 7B, AB 399, and this is an informational report on AB 399, Water Ratepayers Provisions Act of 2023. Director Hinman?
Thank you, Chair Mahorn. This item was requested as an informational item earlier this year. AB 399 revises the County Water Authority Principal Act. CALAFCO and many of the LAFCOs, including Mendocino, submitted letters of opposition to this piece of legislation. However, it was signed into legislation by the governor on October 13th. It should be noted that the only agency formed under this principal act is the San Diego County Water Authority. The bill was in response to San Diego LAFCO's final report on an application they were processing for the Fallbrook PUD and the Rainbow Municipal Water District proposals to transfer wholesale water service responsibilities within their boundaries from the San Diego County Water Authority to the Eastern Municipal Water District. The reasons they stated for the proposals were to achieve cost savings to agencies as well as to both the agencies as well as their ratepayers. LAFCO did approve the proposals in July of this year, and a local election is scheduled for later this month. However, so the bill was introduced approximately 3 weeks after LAFCO released their final report recommending approval. However, in August, the Water Authority announced it was pursuing litigation against San Diego LAFCO's decisions on the grounds of inadequate CEQA analysis. San Diego LAFCO did follow the statutes of the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act that requires passage by voters within the 2 agencies' boundaries. If all goes as planned with the election, the projects will not be impacted by the effects of AB 399. However, AB 399 does attempt to sidestep San Diego LAFCO's decision to allow the 2 agencies to detach from the Water Authority and requires a separate vote of all landowners within the greater Water Authority boundaries. The passage of AB 399 creates uncertainty for any future agency proposals within the Water Authority by requiring passage by voters within the Water Authority as a whole, which is home to about 1.6 million voters. I did invite the San Diego LAFCO executive officer to speak with us today, but unfortunately his commission meeting is at the same time as ours. So he did provide his staff report on this item. It is in your agenda packet. And our legal counsel, Marcia Birch, is also available to help field questions on this piece of legislation.
Thank you. Commissioner Ward.
but what is the relationship between AB 399 and the Assembly Bill 530?
My understanding is that it started out as a piece of legislation within AB 530, and then was later removed from that, and basically AB 399 was rewritten to include it in that piece of legislation. And the reason was they missed a deadline for AB 530.
So the San Diego LAFCO is opposed to it?
Yes, they did work closely with CALAFCO to oppose the legislation on this item.
And how does that affect my life today, this one?
And that's where I'm hoping Marcia can help us a little bit, how this affects LAFCOs throughout the state.
Well, the truth is, it is limited to the San Diego County Water Authority boundary. So it doesn't affect LAFCOs directly, other than San Diego LAFCO. I think it just sets a precedent for, potentially in the future having, other situations arise where there is kind of a legislative sidestepping of LAFCO's authority. And I think that's the concern, and I think it's a legitimate one.
Thank you. I have Commissioner Roden, Commissioner Cole, and Commissioner Horsley with questions as well.
I'm the one who requested that we bring this up because I think it's important for us to, we can apply a lessons learned to our own valley. Where, like with the sanitation district, is gradually going to detach or eventually go away as the city annexes areas, but well, it's a slightly different situation, but not allowing. It's important to not allow the any district or agency to go bankrupt in the process of as areas detach or annexations happen. So I wanted to ask, in the interest of kind of applying how scenarios might work out here, like in this instance with San Diego, it says on page 39 that the San Diego 399, AB 399 serves the water authority's interests. What LAFCO required was that there's a $60 million exit fee, less a credit, for those water districts, Rainbow and whatever, Fallbrook or something, to leave. And I just thought, what other ways have been used or could be used to keep that home, like the authority, the San Diego water, whole, or to not have them be severely impacted by the loss of these two districts? How does an exit fee work? How is it calculated, and what other mechanisms can be used? I just thought it would be educational for us to learn about that.
So I'll take a shot at that. So in this case, the San Diego LAFCO, and I haven't looked at the staff report, so I don't know exactly what the analyses included, but they determined what the appropriate exit fee would be, taking into consideration those fiscal concerns for the water authority and for the departing districts. So I'm not sure. It's so fact specific. I'm not sure how it would be applied in a situation that might come up in Mendocino County.
I can add that the LAFCO did require a very comprehensive financial analysis to support this application, and that they had a number of public hearings on the item. The way that they have structured it is, I believe it's something like $20 million a year over 5 years to kind of phase out and allow the water authority to adjust over time.
Thank you. Commissioner Cole. Okay, fantastic. Commissioner Horsley.
So the major concern for the water district was the loss of revenue for them. And they were concerned about how they were going to continue or if they would struggle with the loss of these two water districts. Is that correct? That was their main concern?
That's my understanding, and they felt that the voters of their entire water authority should have a say in whether or not those two districts should detach. Where the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg requires that the voters specifies that the voters are within the two affected agencies, the two smaller water districts.
Yeah, the issue I see there is if the whole group votes, if they're not educated as to all the financial aspects and how it really works, they're just going to vote to keep them. I would, because it's the easy way to go. And so I understand LAFCO's concern. A perfect example, though, Mari, of what you asked about is the Sand District in the city of Ukiah. We came to an agreement on how we would handle the financial aspects so that the Sand District wasn't left bankrupt. But we were able to come to an agreement. And I'm assuming in this case, LAFCO helped mitigate the financial concerns. So there are a lot of different ways to do it. Like we did it by a percentage of annexation or taking over, and then it would become the city of Ukiah's area. So there are a lot of different ways to handle that.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
You know, and I think this plays out in a number of ways outside of special districts. I mean, I think when cities or entities want to detach from PERS, there's an exit fee and it's calculated. So it's basically, if you want out, this is what it's going to cost you to buy out. And in this case, it was LAFCO that set the, helped set a fee as to what it would cost. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I think in a perfect world, the whole group would say keep them because it'd be cheaper for them, but the interested parties may want a divorce.
Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you for the informational report, and we can move on to item 7C. Another informational report on AB 557, amending Government Code 54953 regarding open meeting laws for local agencies, which was signed into legislation by the governor on October 8th of 2023. Director Hinman.
Thank you. And our legal counsel, Marcia Birch, will be giving us an overview of this one.
Yes, I will. And it's not terribly complicated, but there's some important changes that were made. It's effective on January 1st, 2024. And this all relates to, further amending the teleconferencing meeting rules. So during the pandemic, there was a declared state of emergency. And so as you recall, we had new teleconferencing rules that were made teleconferencing very flexible, very user-friendly for the public and for the commission. So those rules, there isn't a state of emergency any longer. So, those are not in place right now. And that provision was set to sunset on January 1st, 2024. So what this legislation does is it extends it indefinitely. So in case there's another state of emergency, and it could be a natural disaster or, another pandemic, I hope not. So if there's another state of an emergency that is declared for some reason, then those flexible teleconferencing rules will come back into play. And I don't know if you remember, but we had to make a new resolution every 30 days. And, it was always a bit of a task to make sure that the meeting was going to happen in time to, re-adopt that resolution. And so they've extended the time between resolutions to 45 days, which, if that ever comes back into play, will make using it a lot more straightforward. It also makes a few adjustments to the just cause and emergency circumstances that we've been using recently, where some commissioners can attend remotely under certain circumstances. And it extends the sunset provision for that. That was also set to sunset in January 2024, and they've extended that to January 2026. So we can still continue to use those provisions. And this is kind of an odd little item, but they added to the just cause definition to include circumstances where a member needs to appear virtually to protect an immunocompromised child, parent, grandparent, grandchild, sibling, spouse, or domestic partner. It seemed like an odd addition to me, but yeah, so that's what it does. It really just kind of extends out the teleconferencing rules that have been adopted recently. And I'm happy to answer any questions about that one if anyone has any.
Well, I think that for the majority of Mendocino County residents that were able to take advantage of teleconferencing as a means to participate in boards and commissions, this does not get us to where we need to be. And I know that for the Board of Supervisors and their legislative platform, we'll continue to work towards legislation that can really extend the ability to participate across the county, including on the coast and in the North County, where when you're dealing with large rural counties such as Mendocino County, remote participation actually increased the level of participation in our local government. So thank you very much for the analysis on this. Go ahead with Commissioner Gonzalez and then Commissioner Ward.
And it was my understanding that committee assignments or committees are different, so I could hit the mark on how many I attended remotely on the regular session, but I would still be okay on committee. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's the interpretation that we've made of the legislation, because there isn't anything specific directly about that issue, but I think that's a reasonable interpretation of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ward.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm glad it only took 14 pages, but you said it doesn't go far enough. What doesn't it not go far enough?
Well, I think that I think it extends the opportunities that we are experiencing. I think that the opportunity to protect a loved one or a household member that may be immunocompromised, especially during cold and flu season, is important. For me, as a member that attends a lot of board and commissions meetings, I think that what many of the people in our remote areas were looking for was more like a hybrid function, which we can do. It's just more challenging to notice various off-sites, and then more challenging, for instance, for staff to be able to manage a hybrid meeting versus an in-person meeting. So I had hoped that we would be able to offer more meetings fully remote or more hybrid, but that's not where we are right now.
Especially in our county.
Yeah.
But how do we improve on this? How do we get the information to CALAFCO or the legislature?
I think that it's through the various state represented agencies that we all serve on, whether that's LAFCO or the Board of Supervisors or city councils and the League of California Cities. There's a variety of state agencies that take up legislative platforms, and while certainly we can thank them for their efforts, we can also just continue to remind them that we need more.
Yeah, because it's a 3-hour drive from, say, Gowalla to here to attend a meeting. So I'd like to see improvement.
Yeah, I think that we can continue to direct our representatives on all of the boards that rural counties such as ours really need more abilities to remotely participate.
You need internet on top of it.
Yes. Yes. Director Hinman?
I think that's certainly something that we can bring forward to the CALAFCO Legislative Committee and let them know that we are interested in supporting that type of legislation, and maybe they can keep an eye out.
Commissioner Roden, did you have another?
Well, we can also talk to our own legislators, Dwyer, Wood, so on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, seeing no additional commissioners, I'm going to move on to item 7D, SB 938, informational report amending the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Local Government Reorganization Act of 2000 to streamline LAFCO initiated consolidations and protest proceedings, which was signed into legislation by the governor on July 1st, 2022. And again, the commission had asked for several informational items to be brought forward, and as the chair, I discussed with Director Hinman that since we didn't have a lot of, we didn't have any workshops and we didn't have any matters to consider, this was a great meeting to receive these informational updates.
Thank you. This one again is going to be presented by Marcia.
Okay, so this one relates to the LAFCO protest procedures, and there are two big changes. One is it's really consolidated into one chapter, the various protest thresholds. It was always very complicated to, be trying to figure out which thresholds applied. And so it really just did some cleaning up, consolidated those into one chapter. It also has made it easier. So it gives LAFCO a new avenue for dissolving districts that are struggling for one reason or another. If they have chronic service deficiencies, or they're doing something that's unlawful, or just violating even things like the Public Records Act or the Brown Act. One of the analyses I read referred to them as derelict districts, which I didn't really feel like that was maybe a fair term to use for all of these situations, because sometimes districts are struggling for different reasons. But what it does is LAFCO, if a LAFCO initiated a dissolution, that was subject to a 10% protest threshold. So it was very easy for those LAFCO initiated dissolutions to be protested. And so this raises that threshold up to 25%, which is the threshold for a landowner initiated detachment or dissolution, or what a district initiated dissolution. So this raises that threshold up, kind of puts it on a level playing field with other LAFCO actions, and it balances the opportunity for the special district. So the special district has a lengthy period of time to could bring their district into compliance with the law, or kind of get their act together. So this is kind of a complicated list of items, so I'm going to go ahead and just read it. So what it does is, when LAFCO has a district that they're concerned about, they can do an MSR. So that's the first step in this process, is to do an MSR that includes all of the information and data about the situation, kind of focusing on what LAFCO is concerned about. And they adopt that MSR at a noticed public hearing, and that it will include findings based on a preponderance of evidence, which is the same standard that applies in most civil cases, that at least one of the following conditions is met. The district has one or more documented chronic service provision deficiencies that substantially deviate from industry or trade association standards or other government regulations, and the district's board or management is not actively engaged in efforts to remediate the documented service deficiencies. So this first one, I think, it kind of it encapsulates that item that I just spoke about, which is it's really getting a full picture for the LAFCO and the public and the district itself for what's going well and what's going wrong. The next one is, the district spent public funds in an unlawful or reckless manner inconsistent with its principal act or other statute governing the district, and has taken no action to prevent similar future spending. The district has shown willful neglect by failing to consistently adhere to the California Public Records Act and other public disclosure laws. The district has failed to meet the minimum number of times required in its principal act in the prior calendar year, and has taken no action to remediate failures to ensure future meetings are conducted timely. I have seen situations where district boards are just not meeting. The next one is the district has consistently failed to perform timely audits in the prior 3 years or failed to meet minimum financial review requirements allowed as an alternative to performing an audit over the prior 5 years. That's another one that I've seen on multiple occasions where a district is just not performing their financial review or audits as required. The last one is the district's recent annual audits show chronic issues with the district fiscal controls, and the district has taken no action to remediate the issues. So at the time of the adoption of that MSR, with one or more of those findings being made, the LAFCO adopts a resolution of intent to initiate dissolution based on those findings at that notice public hearing. And then the resolution must provide a remediation period of at least 12 months. And when I've seen these done, it usually includes a pretty thoughtful and detailed sort of plan for the district to come into compliance. I think it's been a very useful tool, the way I've seen it used. It seems sort of punitive, like we've determined that you're falling apart here and we're going to dissolve you. But I've actually seen it, really provide a lot of support and a lot of information for the district to, bring their operation up to where it needs to be. So during that period of time, there are remediation steps and also kind of a timeline, dates, and to be followed in a midpoint where they'll report back to LAFCO and say, here's how we're doing. And if at the end of that period, they haven't remediated those problems, then the LAFCO would move forward with that dissolution process at the 25% protest level. So that's just a explanation of what the bill did, and I can answer any questions if anyone has any.
Commissioners, are there any questions? Commissioner Ward?
Yes. Based on what you said, we could probably dissolve quite a few of our little districts. Some of the cemetery districts come to mind.
Right.
So
yes.
Why would we want to do that, though?
Well, you wouldn't, right? When you refer to these cemetery districts, and this, I've thought about this when I first read this, I thought, oh dear, there are situations like that. The cemetery districts, though, and many counties have this same sort of scenario with their cemetery districts. They're not, handling a tremendous amount of, they're not collecting fees and, providing a service or failing to provide a service. They basically are usually in a maintenance kind of situation. So I don't think that the concerns become as critical as they do, at times. Most recently, I've seen, a small community services district that's providing wastewater treatment. When those start to fall apart, there's sort of a cascade of, environmental impacts and, health impacts and what have you. So I think there are, times when it makes sense for LAFCO to kind of get into the business of, what the district is doing, do an MSR, really thoroughly analyze all of those issues. And I think what it is serving to do, at least based on what I've seen in a few situations, is really driving that district into a position where they are, getting their ducks in a row, complying with the law, getting their finances in order. And if they can't, then there will be a successor. It's usually the county that will take over the operation of the district until it can be, reorganized in some way.
Okay, so I recall 2 detachments that we've gone through with protest hearings. Do they also will increase to 25% for detachments?
For LAFCO initiated.
LAFCO initiated.
Yes. So what this does, and I sent a flow chart to Uma that I think is very, very helpful, and I'll make sure that all of you get a copy of it. And it's a flow chart that, really goes through the dissolution of a special district, And so the detachment proceedings, I think that LAFCO initiated,
We didn't,
Uh,
we
this-
didn't initiate the one for, COMSHI. They wanted to detach from
oh,
Fort Bragg.
okay,
Hospital
so it
district.
wasn't, okay, so it wasn't LAFCO
No,
initiated. Okay,
but was the
Yes.
protest be increased?
no, the only LAFCO initiated
Okay.
changes of organization are going to increase.
Thank you. Go to Commissioner Horsley and then Commissioner McGorty.
Marsha, I don't know if you know this, but when Sonoma Water was forced to take over a couple of little wastewater treatment plants, because exactly what you were describing was happening, they couldn't pay to keep them up with all the standards the state had. Do you think that was LAFCO that required that?
It may not have been. I have seen a couple of different, it can, if there is a dissolution, then there can be a successor agency. And oftentimes it's the county, but in that particular case, it probably made sense to do it the way that they did. I've also seen a court-appointed receiver where the court appoints the county as the receiver of the district. So that's another way for them to sort of take over the operations.
So it could have been the county. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Or it could have been a court. I don't know if there were any legal proceedings.
Thank you. Commissioner McGorty.
Yeah, special districts are becoming a challenge here in Mendocino County just to get a quorum for boards and things like that. And the cemetery district also has this, they have another challenge is that their income is going to zero because people are getting cremated instead of buried. And they're supposed to have, you know, some sort of a foundation or other way of putting dollars aside for maintenance, so it's turning into a real problem for rural cemetery districts in our county.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Cole.
Just kind of following up with Commissioner McGorty's comment, I think some of the cemetery districts may welcome LAFCO beginning some kind of dissolution proceeding along these terms, because Marcia said that there might be a successor agency. There are other cemetery districts that are doing really well, that have general managers that might be able to solve the problem. So now I'm seeing this other way that we might be able, in particular with Hopland, if we had the MSR and we find that, like we have an issue of an endowment that was not paid per state law over a very long period of time, that might be an infraction of some kind, that the cemetery districts, some of the small ones, might welcome the opportunity then to have a successor agency. Is this something, Marcia, that we would be able to, I mean, it's weird to say that we'd like to be found in violation of something. But it basically might be a way for us, since we can't get full boards, we can't operate, to find a way out through LAFCO.
Well, so as you heard, that long list of items, right? And it's also each of those items, I don't know if you noticed that the language in it, you know, even kind of an egregious financial error or something, as long as they're committed to not repeating the mistake, or they're, you know, trying to remediate the situation, you know, and that's where that preponderance of the evidence thing comes in. So I think when it comes to these cemetery districts, you're not likely to find, you know, almost this willful mismanagement or this unwillingness to, you know, come into compliance. I think it's just more of, you know, some insurmountable problems, you know, mostly because there's no income. So I think it might be a little bit more of an approach that maybe a consideration of, you know, consolidation But I do think that, one of the things that needs to happen, and I'm not sure the LAFCO, maybe could play a supportive role in this, is helping them find a way to, generate income. And I think this is a challenge in many counties with these rural counties and these small cemetery districts. And it just seems to me that we're maybe all going to be motivated to come up with a solution. Maybe there's a legislative solution. Here we are. I'm not one to and that the work that was done in San Diego to kind of sidestep the LAFCO is really concerning to me. So I'm not suggesting that it would sidestep the LAFCO, but maybe there is sort of a statewide solution to some of these funding problems. I don't know. I mean, I wish I had great ideas for the cemetery districts.
Thank you. Commissioner Roden?
Yeah, what I thought I heard Commissioner Cole saying is that the district itself might be looking for a way to consolidate or dissolve or something. Some districts strain to stay alive because for whatever reasons they institutionalize and they don't want to go away. But some districts, it sounds like maybe it's the Hopland Cemetery District, is looking for a way out by in some form or fashion disappearing. So I don't know, it could be a conversation that but correct me if I'm wrong, that a conversation that the Hopland Cemetery District Board has outside of a meeting, but has with the executive officer to talk about what are the possibilities, and then eventually it could come to the commission to consider. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think what she mentioned was, that there had been some of these sort of irregularities in that maybe this LAFCO initiated dissolution might be an option. But dissolution is always something that can be considered by a district. And again, there's a lot to think about in doing that. There's still a cemetery there, right, to be maintained. So yeah, I think that is something they could certainly, talk with the executive officer about, explore what their options might be.
Commissioner Christian and then Commissioner Ward?
So I'm a little confused. The 10 and 25%, does 10 and 25% of what? The commissioners?
Voters.
Or
Yeah.
I believe that's the 10. So before SB 938, the thresholds for a LAFCO-initiated dissolution were 10% of the registered voters within that district.
registered voters.
And so with SB 938, it levels the thresholds to 25%, whether it's LAFCO-initiated or applicant-driven.
But it's voters. That's part of it.
Correct. Yes, the
Okay,
voters within the agency.
Thank you. Commissioner Ward?
Yeah, Marcia, could I get a list of those items you described, or you were going to give it, I think, to us? Make sure we get those.
Oh, sure. Yeah, the ones that I read.
Yes.
The reasons, where you can justify the dissolution. Yes, absolutely. I will send that to Uma with the flow chart that, for me, when I first was reading about this bill, I found this flow chart and it all just made sense. So I will make sure that you all get a copy of that. And I can send you that list as well. That comes directly out of the statute.
And my stupid comment would be, I know Westport has been one of our bad districts because nobody's even around. But I'm not suggesting like the Poltergeist movie, but that's pretty good property over there on the coast to develop over a cemetery. But no one's going to take on, I don't think, that. Maybe Hopland, maybe somebody come along, but I don't think Fort Bragg's going to come into Westport. But it's a pretty nice piece of property, so.
I did not see that headed this way, but being an 80s kid, I get it.
You don't remember the movie Poltergeist?
I said I was born in 1979. I remember. I picked up what you were putting down. Okay. Director Hinman and then Commissioner Roden.
I just wanted to comment that as we get into these municipal service reviews and sphere updates, that we are working on this with this work plan this year. there are quite a few very small water and wastewater districts over on the coast. And one of the reasons we are doing a more comprehensive review this year is to look at just these issues. And it will be very important that we have the comprehensive analysis done in these municipal service reviews, as well as make the determinations that are necessary for the district, and it may be that we have to develop some sort of plan to assist some of them in coming into compliance. So I just wanted to kind of key the commission in on those, that we are finding some of those issues as we draft these municipal service reviews, and it'll be important that we take a good hard look at them.
Thank you. Commissioner Roden?
Thanks. That's our job. So I think that's great. And also I wanted to point out that page 84 of the packet has the list of, reasons that a dissolution can happen. It's right here in our packet.
Thank you.
Well, I realized that it was the bill that she's talking about, so I figured it was in the bill. So it's not the bill, but it's the legislation for LAFCO, so, or I guess it is the bill, but anyway.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 8A, the work plan and current and future proposals, which was submitted in writing in your packet. So are there any questions on the work plan? Commissioner Ward?
Work plan. There's a lot of progress. Sorry. Thanks, Glenn. There's a lot of in progress. What does that mean?
We're working on it.
I mean, you spent $25,000. You spent a quarter of our budget already, and all I see is in progress.
That's right. So let me explain a little bit about our process this time. These districts, the last time this was done, it was very difficult to get in touch with some of these districts, hard to get a response. So we're taking a different approach this time, where we are developing a rough administrative draft rather than, so previously we had developed a request for information, which was just a list of questions basically, and we sent that out to the district and we waited. And we got no responses from a lot of them. So then we started to schedule, so then we decided to schedule meetings, and that was more helpful, but it was a process that took 6 to 8 months to get information from some of these agencies. This time, we are front-loading that process. We're developing rough administrative drafts so that we have a fairly robust framework to really sit down with the districts and look at with them and walk through the whole document with them. That's why it says in process. This administrative draft is the majority of the work that goes into these MSRs. I have scheduled a meeting later this week with 2 of the agencies on the South Coast. So we are making progress. We do have administrative drafts to them, and we'll be walking through that document with them and obtaining the information that we need to continue the process. So we have rough drafts of all of the agencies done at this point. We are continuing to refine them, and we will be continuing to refine them over the coming months. We hope to start scheduling some public workshops at the beginning of the year, and to continue to work through those through the end of the year. Fiscal year.
End of the year?
Big beginning of the year.
Beginning of year or?
Beginning of next year, of 2024, we hope to start the workshops, and we'll continue those staggered through the end of the fiscal year, so June. That's our hope.
Which ones are the difficult ones that are not responding to you?
There are a number of very small districts. The Casper South Water District, which is a very small wastewater district, and it's a subdivision-specific agency. It's been hard to contact someone. There are several others that we are getting some response from, but not a.
Do they hold regular meetings?
Some of them do not. Some of them do not have full boards. So, and then we are doing a first round MSR on the Mendocino County Water Works District. number 2. So we are working with them, and now we're actually meeting with them later this week.
That's a private one, isn't it?
It is not actually.
Not private.
This recently came on our radar, and it is a special district. It used to be governed by the Board of Supervisors. And then some time ago, maybe 20 years ago, 15 years ago, they elected a board. They are an independent special district, so we are working with them too. And
Are
they
they-
have a new board now, so
Are they
they're
paying their fees?
much more active. They are.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I just remember seeing in the past as commissioners of going to some of the meetings and representing LAFCO and telling them that they need to participate and this is for their benefit and whatnot, but they're not even meeting. That's difficult. But it's something as commissioners, I know in the past we were told to go do that by previous executive officers to help out. So it is something that we maybe can help out to tell them that, hey, we need to get this done.
Absolutely. And it is very beneficial for staff also to meet with the agencies and explain who LAFCO is. A lot of them still don't really understand that.
Commissioner Roden?
Well, South Casper, it's a district, so all the parcels or whatever properties in that district are being taxed, and the money is going, I guess it goes to the county, and then the county distributes it to the board or something. I mean, so the MSR will look, I guess, at what is the revenue that is being collected at the county and where is the money going and how is it being spent. Really good that LAFCOs exist and do this, I think, because otherwise they're in the dark. What's the Washington Post, democracy dies in darkness? I mean, I'm saying that the fact that LAFCO writes MSRs is shedding light on what's going on in districts to see if they're functioning well, if they're really handling taxpayers' money in a proper way, in the way they're supposed to, and nothing illegal going on. So it's good that we're doing this.
Great, thank you. I'm not seeing any additional, Commissioner Gonzalez.
It was taxing the residents and handing the money over to an HOA. And I mean, there was a lot of weirdness happening there, and that was right down to even trying to run their own police department, a la security department, and being shut down by the sheriff, and eventually being shut down by highway patrol, where they had all these sort of things. And LAFCO played a part in that area. Basically, the idea was not necessarily to shut them down, but to cajole them into complying, and that was the intent. Obviously, shutting down a district is not what LAFCO wants to do, but in that particular case, they said, was it no audits, doing the weirdness, HOA relationship, and then collecting rec fees when they didn't really run a rec program and all this other stuff. I mean, and I thought, no, this couldn't be, like, this is something right out of the 60s South kind of thing, but it was right in an affluent, gated community. Right? And they were having public meetings with the public. Anybody couldn't attend their meetings unless you got past the guard. So, I mean, it was just bizarre that this was happening.
Yeah, that was Ventura County.
Ventura, thank you. Commissioner Wood?
Yeah, last thing, there are a lot of lack of board members on some of these small groups. Is there anything that the Board of Supervisors can do? I know you get people in that you can nominate, but I mean, within your districts, can you go talk to people in the community and say, hey, we need a board member?
Commissioner McGorty?
We do.
You do?
We actively try to solicit people to join different organizations. Right now, we have the Civil Service Commission. I don't have a member because the person left. And same thing with our water districts. We have, there's a formula for replacing board members on some of the water districts, and if they can't reach a quorum, the supervisors can choose somebody and nominate them. So we're actively doing that, trying really hard to keep our special districts staffed and or other county organizations staffed, and it's hard. It's hard to field a team in Mendocino County. First of all, because there's not a lot of people here, and second of all, we don't always have qualified people to serve on these.
But didn't I hear that the county was trying to do away with some of the max too?
That was taken a little bit out of context. The real complaint was just the amount of what it was costing us, and we gave direction to our staff to come back and tell us, you know, where they felt that there were some inefficiencies, and some of the MACs are running up legal fees through county council because they weren't doing things the way they were supposed to.
Tell them to join a water district.
Yeah.
Or a cemetery district.
It wasn't the district so much as it just costs to do government, and we're in a point right now where we're really looking for every efficiency that we can, because our income has dropped, our expenses have gone way up, and we're in a tough spot financially.
Yeah, Commissioner Horsley.
Okay, just a comment too about some of these little sanitation districts or wastewater or whatever. If they do, can't keep going, who then runs it? I mean, that's the big question. Down in Sonoma County, you had Sonoma County Water. Up here, you don't have that situation, so that's going to be a huge question if it comes to dissolving any of those.
Thank you. Thank you for the discussion, and thank you for your report. We can move on to item 8B, which is correspondence received, and we did receive a letter from the Hopland MAC, and it was regarding the Hopland Cemetery. So that correspondence has been received, and I think this would be the time that commissioners can ask questions of our director or comment. I think it's more information is needed at this point. So Director Hinman, did you want to do a brief update to the commission?
Briefly update that we'll be setting up some meetings with county staff and the Hopland Cemetery District board members, and working through the questions to see if we can help resolve some of that.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 8C, the CALAFCO Business and Legislative Report.
Thank you. We had three folks from Mendocino LAFCO that attended the conference in Monterey. It was a really great conference this year. We had Commissioner Gonzalez, and then myself and our analyst Larkin Filer. We did have a last-minute cancellation, so rather than lose that registration, our analyst was able to use that. It was a wonderful conference. It was a beautiful location. A lot of great sessions that I think that we can pull from in informational reports in the coming months. The CALAFCO business meeting, I don't know, Commissioner Gonzalez, do you want to report?
I think it just recapped the election, and basically they ran unopposed, so it was it was pretty easy. I showed up, and in fact, one of the parties brought some candy and cards. I guess his wife did. We all kind of joked that I guess you don't need to campaign because you don't have anybody. I guess they have to kind of go through the motions because somebody could come in and as a write-in at the last minute. So all joking aside, everybody pretty much knew how it was going to go, but it didn't go. And then at the meeting there, I think they highlighted some of the legislation that we talked about today at the meeting, and then they just reaffirmed the candidates being elected. I think that's, unless you remember something else.
Oh, I just wanted to share that I was one of the panelists on the first day's general session on how LAFCOs respond and prepare for disaster recovery. So I was asked to join and discuss the Mendocino drought situation. So it was all, the other panelists talked about the town of Paradise and what the Paradise is doing to be better prepared for fire in the future as they rebuild and the challenges around that. And then there was a good discussion from one of the panelists on what MSRs can address. So there's the basics, which are the 7 criteria determinations that we always address. but there's a lot more that can be done. So I'd like to do an informational session at some point in the future on municipal service reviews and how they're changing with the times.
Thank you, Commissioner Roden.
Well, maybe you could do that before we review the coastal districts, so we have that in our mind.
Sure, that's an excellent idea. Thank you.
How was the turnout?
It was very good. I think it was somewhere between 250, around
Good.
250, I think.
I think I noticed from the first time I went, and I think has a lot to do with probably the pre-pandemic attendance at things to, I think it was a smaller venue, because before we were at the larger venue. Yeah, no, it was well attended. It just seemed like, I thought when we were in downtown Monterey, I think it was just a bigger event, but and then Marcia also spoke on a panel too, so.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no additional questions, we can move on to the verbal executive officer's report.
So I wanted to just mention a couple of things. We have a policies and procedures meeting that will be immediately following this one with the committee members, and that will be located in conference room B. And then wanted to touch again on the city of Fort Bragg, working with the city of Fort Bragg on their out-of-agency service provisions for water and sewer. So we've sent some correspondence back and forth, and we are working with their staff to better understand where those service provisions are and then how best to address them. So staff is spending quite a bit of time on that, so wanted to report that. And I don't have anything further, although I imagine that we'll have some items that come forward from the Policies and Procedures Committee meeting in the coming months.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, on to committee reports, and we will be meeting with Policies and Procedures after this meeting. And then I think we can just move on to commissioner reports, comments, or questions. So Commissioner McGorty.
I just want to give everyone a quick update on what's going on with Eel River water transfers, or, also known as the Potter Valley Project, but I'm calling it Eel River water transfers because we need to start thinking differently about all of that. So I'm happy to say that there seems to be some really good movement in working with PG&E as part of their plan to no longer, well, they're going to decommission Scott Dam and Cape Horn Dam, and they've created a way to include in that transfer of some of the assets to a group to be determined. It'll be a JPA, and we're in the process of negotiating for that, and a lot of it is still kind of somewhat confidential, so I can't go into detail on it, but at least there's a plan. And the whole process is going to take will first be very quick. So by the end of this year, we have to have an entity that is formally a JPA to be formally involved in negotiations. But what that will be in the end is yet to be determined. And then we have to more or less have a plan to PG&E on how things are going to work by March of next year. And then I guess the beginning of January 2025 is when they actually put their decommission plan into the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. At that point, there's 4 years probably of review, and if they approve it, and believe it or not, that's fast tracking, and if they approve it, then PG&E will have to begin to, in earnest, take the dams down. So we're looking at quite a long time period where things will continue to be somewhat like they are now. But I just wanted to give everyone an update that this is an important resource. Looks like there's a way forward, but there's so much to determine in terms of how it's going to work, what options we go with. The other thing that's good is that there, behind the scenes is work with the resource agencies to come to some kind of understanding as to how the water is going to be managed so that the fisheries can recover. And what PG&E really wants is they don't want to get into a situation where we have a plan and then they're going to get sued instantly by environmental groups. So there's pretty good work on trying to find a way to make sure that doesn't happen, that everybody is on board and that the concerned stakeholders are moving in the same direction with the rest of us. So for the first time that that I've been hearing about this, I feel somewhat optimistic that maybe we'll find a solution. It won't be the same because all the transfers will be winter storage, not, or winter transfers, not summer transfers as they are now. But there's still a chance that we'll be able to have up to 50,000 acre-feet of water coming into the Russian River Basin. And I'm sure LAFCO is going to get involved in this because there's going to be infrastructure changes and jurisdictional changes that will make some of our existing special districts change. So this is going to be a very long process that will probably go on beyond any of us sitting here and serving on LAFCO. So, you know, I'm looking at this as being planning for the next 100 years, and that's kind of how we're thinking about it. This is sort of our last opportunity, and we really have to work hard to make sure that it's successful.
Thank you for the update. Do any other commissioners have an update they'd like to share with the board? Commissioner Gonzalez, sorry.
Just kind of a more of a recap on CalAFCO. One of the things I was able to see there was kind of a broad, in some places in the state, there's not a lot happening. In other places, LAFCOs are kind of doing what they're supposed to be doing in areas where the ducks, you know, some places where property was annexed into cities, but they were kind of allowed to annex what I'll call the good parts of the area and left these islands out there that in a lot of areas that's being corrected. And in the case of that example given with the weirdness out there, that LAFCOs are there to help. They're not the they're not the evil boogeyman that's trying to keep annexations from happening or whatever, but they're there to help out. And that seemed to be the general focus of this of the conference, was that they're there to help. I mean, kind of like your big brother that's there to offer you some help and not to beat you into submission. So I just wanted to point that out.
So many interesting analogies today. Director Hinman.
I wanted to just, well, thank you, Commissioner McGordy, for bringing up the Eel Russian River transfer. I did reach out to Janet Pauley and to see if she wanted to present on that proposal to the commission, and I believe she will be presenting an informational report on December 4th. I think it's the 4th, our next regular meeting. So I just wanted to note that.
Great. Thank you. And so with that, it looks like that we can adjourn our regular meeting, and the Policies and Procedures Committee will meet in Conference Room B perhaps in about 7 to 10 minutes. Conference Room B is going to be out and then to the left and the right and then the left again. Thank you. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Madam Chair, well done.
You're welcome.